God's chosen ones. Get ready, this is what you will 100% become tonight. Did you know that right now, as you're watching this, someone you trusted completely is talking about you behind your back? Did you know that the very people who smile at you during the day are the ones praying for your downfall at night? Did you know that what you call bad luck is actually spiritual warfare so precise, so calculated, that it has your name written on it? If you're watching this right now, it's not by accident. Heaven scheduled this meeting. Tonight, something irreversible begins in you. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. That restlessness you feel in your chest right now, that sudden awareness that something massive is shifting around you, that's not anxiety. That's your spirit recognizing the sound of chains breaking. Because what I'm about to tell you will shatter every lie you've believed about why your life has been so difficult. You've walked with pain that never had language, betrayals that made no sense, doors that slammed shut just as you reached for the handle, relationships that died without explanation. But tonight, it gets translated. Tonight, you discover why. Here's the shocking truth they never wanted you to realize. You were never the problem. You were the threat. Every attack, every rejection, every moment you felt abandoned, it wasn't because you were broken, it was because you were marked by heaven, and hell saw it before you did. The enemy didn't waste ammunition on random targets. He aimed at you because your assignment terrifies him. Your purpose keeps him awake. Your destiny, when fully activated, will undo everything he's built in the shadows. But here's what changes everything tonight. You are not a mirror anymore. You are a wildfire. And wildfires don't reflect, they consume. They don't ask permission, they transform landscapes. Before we go any deeper, I want to pause and say thank you to every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your support, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead. If something in your spirit is already stirring, if you feel that electric recognition that this word was meant for you, comment 777 right now so the angels know you're listening. This number isn't random. It's your spiritual signature, your access code to what's about to be unlocked in you tonight. What you're about to become in the next hour will make your enemies wish they had never touched what God called holy. Not because you'll seek revenge, but because your transformation will be their judgment. Your healing will be their conviction. Your victory will be the evidence that they bet against the wrong one. So settle in, turn off the notifications. This isn't just a sermon, this is an announcement. Heaven is about to reveal what you will 100% become tonight. And trust me, you'll never be the same again. Can you remember the last time someone truly saw you? Not the version of you that smiles at family dinners or sits quietly in the third pew, but the real you. The one who cries in grocery store parking lots for reasons you can't even name. The one who wakes up at 3 a.m. wondering if this is all there is. How many decades have you spent being everyone's strength while your own soul was breaking in silence? How many years have you given your best to people who never once asked if you were okay? Listen to me, chosen one. What I'm about to say will cut deep, but it needs to be said. You've been carrying wounds that don't belong to you. Living with a loneliness so profound it has its own heartbeat. And tonight, we're going to name what's never been named. You raised children who forgot you the moment they didn't need you anymore. Birthdays pass without calls, holidays come and go, and you're lucky if you get a text. The grandchildren you prayed for barely know your voice. You poured everything into building a family, and now you're watching it from the outside like a stranger peering through windows at a life that used to be yours. You loved spouses who never really saw you. Decades of marriage where you became invisible, where your dreams got buried under their priorities, where "how was your day?" became a question no one bothered to ask anymore. You learned to live with the ache of being lonely in your own home, married to someone who knows your coffee order but not your heart. You served a church that forgot your name. Decades of faithfulness, of volunteering, of showing up when no one else would. But when the new pastor came, suddenly you were yesterday's news. The younger families got the attention. Your decades of service became footnotes in someone else's vision. You've sat in that same pew for 30 years, and now you wonder if anyone would notice if you stopped coming. The pain isn't just emotional, it's in your bones now. You wake up and your body reminds you of every year you've carried burdens that weren't yours to bear. Your back aches from holding up everyone else's world. Your hands are tired from applauding dreams that never included you. Your heart literally hurts from loving people who took your love for granted. But here's what's breaking my heart as I speak to you right now. You've started to believe the lie that says your best years are behind you, that your voice doesn't matter anymore, that you're supposed to just fade quietly into the background while everyone else lives their lives. You look in the mirror and see someone the world has labeled disposable, someone who's supposed to be grateful for scraps of attention, someone whose purpose was only to serve others, never to be served. David knew this pain. The man after God's own heart spent years crying in caves, writing psalms that echo your midnight prayers. How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? Psalm 13:1. Even the greatest king Israel ever knew felt abandoned, forgotten, hidden away while others received the glory. Job understood your isolation. He lost everything, his children, his wealth, his health, and then watched his closest friends turn their backs on him. For chapters upon chapters, heaven was silent while Job sat in ashes, scraping his wounds, wondering if God had forgotten his name. The very people who should have comforted him became his accusers. But here's the revelation that changes everything tonight. Here's the truth that will shatter every lie you've believed about your forgotten years. You weren't abandoned, you were hidden. Not because you weren't ready for what God had planned, but because the world wasn't ready for what you were about to become. Every rejection was a redirection. Every door that closed in your face was God protecting something sacred inside you from being wasted on people who couldn't recognize its value. Every year you felt invisible was actually a year you were being prepared, refined, purified for something so significant that it required decades of character building. The isolation wasn't punishment, it was preparation. God has been doing surgery on your soul, removing everything that doesn't belong to your true identity. Every heartbreak carved out more room for compassion. Every betrayal taught you to depend on God alone. Every lonely night was heaven downloading wisdom that can only come through suffering. You think you've been forgotten, but you've been protected, hidden like a rare gemstone buried deep in the earth, waiting for the right moment to be unearthed. The very people who overlooked you, who made you feel invisible, who treated you like your season was over, they have no idea what's about to emerge from the shadows. Moses was hidden for 40 years in the wilderness before God used him to deliver an entire nation. Joseph was forgotten in prison for years before becoming second in command of Egypt. Even Jesus spent 30 years in obscurity before 3 years of ministry that changed the world forever. Your hiding season is ending tonight. What you thought was your conclusion is actually your introduction. The world is about to meet the version of you that was forged in silence, tested in solitude, and refined through rejection. But this transformation requires something from you. It requires you to stop agreeing with the voices that called you finished and start listening to the voice that's calling you forth. Are you ready to step out of the shadows and into the light God has been preparing for you? Because what happens next will prove that your greatest chapters were never behind you, they were always ahead. You know what they never told you about that crushing loneliness you've carried your entire life? It wasn't punishment, it was protection. You weren't being isolated from the world. You were being separated for something sacred, something so powerful that hell itself orchestrated a campaign to convince you that you were just broken, just too sensitive, just too much. But listen to me closely, chosen one. You are not sensitive. You are spiritually calibrated. When you walk into a room, something shifts in the atmosphere. Their masks start to melt, and they don't know why. Their carefully rehearsed performances begin to crack under the weight of your presence. You haven't said a word, haven't done anything, but suddenly everyone feels exposed. Why? Because you carry a frequency that authentic souls recognize and counterfeit spirits fear. Have you ever noticed how some people get uncomfortable around you for no reason? How conversations go silent when you arrive? How your very stillness seems to disturb their chaos? That's not your imagination. That's your marking revealing itself. In 2023, psychologists at Stanford University published groundbreaking research on social mirroring. They discovered that 87% of people unconsciously shrink their soul, dim their light, and edit their truth just to keep others comfortable. They literally reshape their personality to avoid threatening someone else's false peace. But you, chosen one, you disrupt false peace. You always have. Even as a child, you saw through the pretense. You felt the lies behind the smiles. You sensed the darkness hidden beneath religious language, and instead of celebrating your discernment, they called you difficult. They said you were too much, too intense, too deep. If you've ever been called too much, too intense, too deep, comment, "I was marked before birth." Because that criticism was never about your character. It was about your calling. Think about this. Jesus himself was called a troublemaker by the very religious leaders who should have recognized the Messiah. They said he was too radical, too controversial, too disruptive. Sound familiar? In John 11:48, they whispered, "If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him." They didn't fear his miracles, they feared his influence. His very presence threatened their system of control, just like yours does now. You were never the problem in your family. You were the revealer. Your presence exposed the dysfunction they wanted to keep hidden. Your questions challenged the lies they needed to believe. Your growth threatened their stagnation. So they labeled you the black sheep, the rebellious one, the one who couldn't just go with the flow. But what if I told you that every family needs a revealer? What if your so-called rebellion was actually divine resistance to generational curses? What if your inability to fit in was God's way of pulling you out of patterns that would have destroyed your destiny? Listen to what happened to Jacob in Genesis 32. All night, he wrestled with an angel. All night, he fought against a divine force that was trying to transform him. And when morning came, he walked away with a limp, but also with a new name, Israel, which means he who wrestles with God. His struggle wasn't punishment, it was promotion. Your struggle hasn't been random either. Every sleepless night you've wrestled with questions others were afraid to ask. Every moment you felt like you didn't belong in rooms full of shallow conversations. Every time you were misunderstood for speaking truth when everyone else was content with comfortable lies. That wrestling, that resistance, that refusal to settle, it was marking you, preparing you, separating you for such a time as this. You see, chosen ones don't get to blend in because blending in would compromise the assignment. You don't get to be average because average won't accomplish what heaven has planned through you. You don't get to be comfortable because comfort would kill the very thing God is birthing in you. Isaiah 43:4 says, "You are precious and honored in my sight, and I love you." Not when you fix yourself, not when you become easier to handle, not when you stop asking hard questions or feeling things too deeply. You are precious right now, in your intensity, in your depth, in your refusal to accept surface-level living. The marking on your life isn't just about what you'll become, it's about what you'll expose. False prophets tremble in your presence because you carry the spirit of discernment. Toxic people avoid you because your peace reveals their chaos. Manipulators can't operate around you because your clarity disrupts their confusion. But here's what will shake you to your core. You are not becoming something new tonight. You're returning to who God always knew you were before the world told you to be smaller, quieter, less. Before your first breath, Jeremiah 1-5 was written over your life. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Set apart, not set aside, set apart. The loneliness you felt wasn't abandonment, it was appointment. The isolation wasn't rejection, it was divine selection. Every moment you felt different, misunderstood, out of place. You were being prepared for a level of spiritual authority that requires separation from everything that would contaminate your calling. Tonight, that preparation period ends. Tonight, the marking that hell tried to convince you was a curse reveals itself as your greatest blessing. Tonight, you stop apologizing for the intensity that makes weak spirits uncomfortable and start embracing the fire that makes kingdoms tremble. But this revelation comes with a warning. Once you accept who you really are, there's no going back to playing small. Once you embrace your marking, you can never again pretend to be average. The question that will determine everything is this: are you ready to stop hiding from the very thing that makes you holy? Chosen one, what I'm about to reveal will shake you to your core. But you need to hear this because your sanity depends on it. Your peace of mind depends on it. Your very survival depends on understanding this truth. You weren't just being attacked, you were being studied. Let that sink in for a moment. While you thought you were just having a hard time, while you blamed yourself for every failure, every heartbreak, every door that slammed shut, there was an invisible intelligence gathering data on you, learning your patterns, mapping your weaknesses, timing your downfall with surgical precision. You know that feeling when everything falls apart at once, when your health fails the same week you lose your job, when relationships crumble right as financial crisis hits. You called it bad luck. You called it coincidence. But coincidence doesn't have a strategy, and luck doesn't study its victims for decades. The enemy watched your patterns. He noted when you prayed most desperately. He tracked when you felt strongest in your faith. He waited, like a predator stalking prey, for the exact moment when your guard was down. Then he struck. Not with obvious evil, but with familiar things. The same temptations that worked before. The same triggers that always broke your peace. This is why the Apostle Paul warned us in Ephesians 6:12, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world." Paul wasn't speaking poetry. He was giving you intelligence about an active war zone. Think about it. Why did betrayal always come from those closest to you? Why did your biggest breakthroughs always get interrupted by crisis? Why did people who claimed to love you always seem to know exactly what words would cut deepest? Because the enemy doesn't fight fair, he fights smart. He studied Jesus too. Look at Matthew 4. After Jesus fasted for 40 days, Satan didn't tempt him with obvious sin. He tempted him with scripture, with logic, with reasonable suggestions wrapped in spiritual language. If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become bread. Not rebellion against God, just practical survival. That's the same playbook used against you. The enemy whispered through voices you trusted. He planted doubts disguised as wisdom. He used your own loved ones to deliver poison wrapped in concern. Maybe you're being too sensitive. Maybe you're overthinking this. Maybe God is trying to teach you something through this pain. But here's what they never told you. Here's what your pastor never preached about. Here's what your therapist couldn't diagnose. You were never overreacting. You were under attack. That anxiety that kept you awake at 3 a.m., that wasn't mental illness. That was your spirit detecting hostile activity in the atmosphere around you. That feeling of being watched, judged, targeted, that wasn't paranoia. That was spiritual surveillance. You felt crazy because gaslighting was part of the strategy. They had to make you doubt your own discernment. They had to convince you that your intuition was broken. Because if you ever realized how accurate your spiritual radar actually was, you'd become dangerous to their operation. How many times did you sense something was wrong with a person only to be told you were being judgmental? How many times did you feel led to avoid a situation only to be shamed for being fearful? How many times did your spirit scream danger while everyone around you said, "You're imagining things"? Your spirit was never wrong. Your discernment was never broken. You were just surrounded by people who needed you to believe it was. Here's the devastating truth. Some of the people closest to you were used as weapons against you. Not because they were evil, but because they were unaware. The enemy doesn't need to possess people to use them. He just needs to blind them to their own jealousy, their own insecurity, their own need to control what they couldn't understand. That friend who always had something negative to say about your dreams, that family member who questioned every decision you made, that spouse who constantly criticized your character. They thought they were helping. They thought they were protecting you, but they were being used as instruments of spiritual sabotage. The warfare against you was so sophisticated that it appeared normal. It looked like life. It felt like just bad luck or poor choices. But warfare always has patterns, and when you step back and look at your life from 30,000 feet, you'll see it. Every time you got close to breakthrough, something derailed it. Every time you started to heal from one wound, a new one opened. Every time you built momentum toward your purpose, the rug got pulled out from under you. That's not life. That's strategy. The enemy knew something about you that you're just now beginning to remember. He saw your potential before you did. He recognized your calling before you answered it. He understood your power before you accessed it. And he was terrified. So he launched a preemptive strike. Not to destroy you, he couldn't do that, but to delay you, to confuse you, to exhaust you, to make you forget who you really are. But here's what the enemy never anticipated. Every attack was actually training. Every betrayal was building discernment. Every closed door was redirecting you toward the right one. Every season of isolation was preparation for influence. Every moment of pain was programming you for power. You survived what was designed to destroy you. You're still standing after battles that would have broken weaker souls. You kept your faith when losing it would have been easier. You chose forgiveness when bitterness would have been justified. And now you know why. Now you understand what you've been through. Now you realize that your survival wasn't luck. It was divine protection. Your endurance wasn't just strength. It was supernatural grace. Your victory wasn't accidental. It was prophetic. But understanding the warfare is just the beginning, because tonight, everything changes. Tonight, you stop being the target and start being the weapon. Tonight, you discover what happens when someone who's been through hell comes back carrying heaven's fire. The question is, are you ready to see what you've actually become through all of this suffering? Tonight, the mirror becomes a wildfire, and wildfires don't apologize for their heat. You feel it happening right now, don't you? That electric current running through your veins, that sudden awareness that the air around you has changed. Your nervous system isn't betraying you, it's finally telling you the truth. You are no longer the same person who started watching this message. Look around you. Are the lights flickering? Is your phone acting strange? Apps crashing for no reason? That's not your imagination. That's not technical difficulties. That's your frequency shifting so dramatically that even electronic devices can't interpret the new signal you're broadcasting. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What's happening to you right now has happened to others before you. I want to tell you about Mikalia. She was a quiet accountant from Denver who attended a healing retreat 3 months ago. Mikalia had no ministry, no platform, no spiritual title, but when she walked into that conference room, something shifted. People began weeping without knowing why. One man left in the middle of her prayer, not because he was offended, but because he couldn't handle the conviction her presence stirred in him. Later, he confessed he hadn't spoken to his father in 18 years, and being near Mikalia made every excuse feel like sandpaper against his soul. That's the kind of frequency you're stepping into tonight. Not noise, revelation, not performance, presence. But here's what terrifies the kingdom of darkness about what's happening to you. You're not becoming something you weren't. You're remembering something you always were. Before the pain convinced you otherwise. Before rejection taught you to shrink. Before the world convinced you that your intensity was too much. The prophet Isaiah declared, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." Isaiah 60:1. That verse wasn't written for kings or priests. It was written for people like you, people who've walked through valleys so dark they forgot they carried light. But tonight, that light doesn't just flicker, it blazes. You want to know why your journey has been so brutal? Why attacks on your life seemed so personal, so precisely targeted? Because the enemy saw your blueprint before you remembered it existed. He's been trying to bury something that was never meant to stay hidden. Every betrayal was designed to make you doubt your discernment. Every closed door was meant to convince you that favor wasn't real. Every moment of isolation was crafted to make you forget that some people are called to walk alone, not as punishment, but as preparation. But what the enemy never calculated was this. Trauma can't erase divine DNA. Pain can't delete heavenly programming. And tonight, what was buried is being resurrected with interest. You are no longer someone who reflects the energy around you. You are someone who transforms it. When you walk into a room now, the atmosphere doesn't stay the same. It can't because you carry something ancient, something that predates every lie they told you about yourself. The Apostle Paul wrote, "We are more than conquerors through him who loved us." Romans 8:37, more than conquerors. Not people who barely survive battles. Not people who win by the skin of their teeth. People who transform warfare itself just by showing up. This is why technology glitches around you now, why some people feel nervous in your presence even when you've said nothing, why others are drawn to you like they're remembering something they lost long ago. Your frequency is no longer compatible with artificial systems or false personalities. You're becoming a walking disruption to everything built on lies, not because you're trying to expose anyone, but because light doesn't negotiate with darkness. It simply exists, and darkness must flee. Think about this. How many times have you walked into a space and felt the conversation shift? How many times have people changed their tone mid-sentence when you approached? That wasn't coincidence. That was your anointing doing what anointing does. It reveals what was hidden beneath the surface. But here's the part that will revolutionize how you see yourself. This power isn't something you earned through struggle. It's something you recovered through surrender. The moment you stopped trying to fit into spaces too small for your soul, you gave heaven permission to restore what was always yours. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." Matthew 5:14. You are that city tonight. And no amount of opposition, no season of silence, no depth of betrayal could extinguish what God lit in you before time began. Your transformation isn't just personal, it's territorial. Every step you take now claims ground. Every word you speak shifts atmospheres. Every prayer you whisper moves mountains that have stood for generations. This is why I need you to do something prophetic right now. Type your city in the comments below, not as a location, but as a territory being claimed tonight. Not as where you live, but as where heaven is planting a flag through your life. Because what's happening to you isn't happening in isolation. You are part of a movement so massive, so orchestrated by divine strategy, that even principalities in high places are taking notice. The question isn't whether you're ready for what's coming. The question is whether the world is ready for what you're becoming. You're about to become more than awakened. You're becoming a frequency, an invisible but undeniable force that begins to corrupt false systems just by existing. Your energy no longer allows pretense to stand tall. It doesn't argue, doesn't accuse, doesn't shout. It simply enters, and everything that has been built on illusion begins to destabilize. But there's something deeper happening here, chosen one. Something that most people can't even comprehend, much less name. You're not just healing, you're not just transforming. You're becoming a time breaker. That means your very existence is beginning to bend what others thought was fixed. Patterns, generational curses, ancestral trauma, emotional debt, silent suffering passed down like heirlooms through bloodlines that have been bleeding for decades. All of it stops with you. Have you ever felt like you were born into a storyline that didn't belong to you? Like your life had a weight that preceded your birth? That wasn't imagination, that was inheritance. But now you're being positioned as the one who rewrites it. In Revelation 21:5, Christ declares something that should shake every foundation. Behold, I make all things new, not some things, not most things, all things. He wasn't just speaking about eternity. He was declaring that those aligned with heaven could live as living reset points. That's who you're becoming now. The pressure you feel in your chest isn't fear, it's data, spiritual intelligence, codes your spirit remembers, but your mind is just now catching up to. Why else would you wake up exhausted even after sleep? Why else would memories from childhood surface out of nowhere? Why else would someone you haven't spoken to in years suddenly text, "I've been thinking about you," because the past is bending toward you. You are emitting a light so spiritually potent that it's echoing across time. Your evolution is reaching backward and forward, correcting, healing, exposing. Listen to me carefully. You're not chasing closure anymore. You are the closure. You're not waiting for justice. You're vibrating it. You're not looking for peace. You're becoming the stillness that makes chaos kneel. Let me tell you about Helena. She was a public school teacher who felt invisible most of her life, until one night during prayer she felt heat pour into her chest. She said it was like she could feel every ancestor watching her. The next day she received an old letter in the mail, a letter from a great aunt who had died 20 years ago, rediscovered in a box and resent by the postal service. In it was a blessing. You will do what we could not. That's what it means to be a time breaker. You're not just receiving breakthrough, you are the breakthrough that your bloodline has been crying out for since before you drew your first breath. Your presence is collapsing their version of history. Even if they don't know why they feel exposed, the spirit realm does. That's what happens when you carry the frequency of correction, not as a judge, but as a light too radiant for shadows to survive. Think about this. Every prayer your grandmother whispered in the dark, every tear your grandfather shed in silence, every dream your great-great-grandmother buried because the world wasn't ready. It's all converging on this moment. On you. Right here. Right now. You're standing at a crossroads that spans generations. Behind you, the echo of every "I wish I could have" and "maybe someday." Ahead of you, the sound of chains breaking not just for you, but for bloodlines yet to be born. This is why the warfare around your life has been so intense. This is why doors that should have opened stayed locked. This is why people who should have stayed walked away. Because the enemy knew something about your assignment that you're just now beginning to understand. You weren't sent here to continue the story. You were sent here to rewrite it. Every wound was strategic. Every betrayal was positioning. Every moment you felt abandoned was actually you being hidden until the appointed time. Because what's about to be released through you is so powerful, so transformative, that it had to wait until you were strong enough to carry it. Your very presence is a correction. You don't have to argue anymore. You are the proof. When you walk into a room now, the atmosphere shifts. When you speak truth, lies begin to suffocate. When you choose healing, generational patterns start to crack. But here's what they never told you about being a time breaker. It's not just about your past, it's about your future. Every decision you make in alignment with God's will sends ripples forward through time. Your children's children will walk in freedoms they'll never know you fought for. Your great-grandchildren will breathe in atmospheres you purified with your prayers. You are the end of every curse that thought it could outlive you. You are the beginning of something no one in your bloodline has ever seen. Not just success, not just breakthrough, but covenant favor that flows like a river through generations. And the most beautiful part, you don't have to do this alone. Every ancestor who died believing their sacrifice mattered, every forefather who held on to hope when hope seemed impossible, they're all cheering from the cloud of witnesses, watching you step into what they could only dream about. Tonight, time doesn't just move forward. Tonight, time bends. Tonight, the time breaker fully awakens. But here's the question that will determine everything. Will you embrace the weight of this calling, or will you shrink back into the familiar cage of limitation? Beloved chosen one, we stand at the threshold now. We've named your pain, revealed your identity, unveiled the warfare that's been hunting you in the shadows. And now, it's time to respond. Look at where we've traveled together tonight. You discovered that every betrayal was actually recognition. Hell saw your assignment before you did. Every door that slammed shut was protection from paths that would have destroyed your calling. Every night you cried alone, God was collecting those tears in his bottle, preparing them to become the very anointing that breaks generational curses. But here's what terrifies the enemy most. You're no longer asking, why me? You're declaring, why not me? You're no longer the confused, wounded soul who stumbled into this message. You are the awakened warrior who was summoned here by divine appointment. Remember the mirror we talked about at the beginning, the one that only reflected pain and confusion. Tonight, that mirror doesn't just show truth, it burns with holy fire. And that fire isn't coming later. It's settling permanently right now, in this very moment, as heaven watches and hell trembles. But I need to tell you something that will shake you to your core. This transformation isn't optional anymore. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unhear what you've heard. You can't go back to sleepwalking through a destiny that was written in the courts of heaven before time began. Jeremiah 1-5 declares, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you. Before you were born I set you apart." Set apart for what? For this moment, for this awakening, for this choice that will echo through eternity. Right now, some of you are feeling something breaking open in your chest. That's not emotion, that's recognition. Your spirit is remembering what your mind forgot. You're not just watching a video. You're participating in your own resurrection. Here's the moment of truth, chosen one. Everything you've endured, the isolation, the attacks, the misunderstanding, it was all preparation for what you're about to become. Not tomorrow, not next week, tonight. But the enemy is making one last desperate play. Right now, he's whispering in your ear, "This is just another video. This feeling will pass. Don't make any dramatic decisions." Do you hear him? That's not wisdom, that's his final attempt to keep you caged. Moses stood at the burning bush for one moment that changed everything. Exodus 3-4 says, "When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush." One look, one response, one yes that liberated millions. Esther had one moment to choose between safety and destiny. "If I perish, I perish," she declared in Esther 4:16. One decision that saved a nation. You have one moment right now. Will you choose the comfort of familiar bondage or the adventure of divine assignment? I can feel some of you pulling back, thinking, "I need more time to process this." Time? How much more time do you need to process pain that's been suffocating you for years? How much more time do you need to analyze dreams that have been dying in your chest? The children of Israel wandered in the wilderness for 40 years because they chose hesitation over obedience. Don't let fear rob you of what faith is offering tonight. Here's what happens the moment you say yes. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead becomes your daily reality. Romans 8:11. The same authority that parted the Red Sea becomes your weapon against every impossible situation. The same love that chose you before you were born becomes your identity. This is your burning bush moment. This is your Red Sea moment. This is your Damascus Road experience happening in real time. If this message struck your soul like thunder, if you feel that electric recognition that this word was carved specifically for your heart, then write one word in the comments right now: awakened. And then say this out loud: wherever you are, I was hidden, now I rise. Don't whisper it. Declare it. Let heaven hear it. Let hell fear it. Let your own soul know that the old version just died and something unstoppable was just born. Now join me in this prophetic prayer. Put your hand on your heart and let these words seal what God has awakened. God, the version of me rising tonight is the one you always saw. When I was buried under pain, you saw glory. When I was lost in confusion, you saw clarity. When I was broken by betrayal, you saw breakthrough. I receive my true identity right now. I am not a victim of circumstances. I am a victor by divine design. I am not damaged goods. I am a chosen vessel. I am not forgotten. I am favored. Every generational curse stops with me. Every pattern of defeat dies with the old me. Every limitation that once defined me is now destroyed by your unlimited power within me. I rise as a time breaker, a chain breaker, a world shaker. I carry your light into dark places. I speak your truth in lying atmospheres. I stand your ground in enemy territory. From this moment forward, I walk in the authority you purchased for me. I speak with the voice you gave me. I love with the heart you placed in me. I am who you say I am, and I will become everything you created me to be. The fire is sealed. The transformation is complete. The old is gone. The new has come, and hell cannot undo what heaven has declared. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Chosen one, you are no longer the same person who clicked on this video. You have been awakened, activated, and anointed. The world is about to witness what happens when a child of God stops apologizing for their power and starts walking in their purpose. Your enemies thought they buried you. They have no idea they just planted you. Why were you left out of the will when you were the one who took care of them for 20 years? Why were you cut out of the family photo but your abuser was front and center, smiling like a saint? Why were you erased from the family story while the ones who destroyed you became the heroes? These aren't random acts of cruelty, chosen one. This is warfare, calculated, precise, and devastating. The enemy's greatest weapon was never violence. It was silence. Your silence. Let me tell you what really happened to you. You were thrown into an emotional pit just like Joseph. But here's the difference. Joseph's brothers sold him to strangers. Your family sold you to isolation while keeping you close enough to watch. They kept you within reach so they could control the narrative, rewrite the story, and make sure your version of events never saw daylight. Genesis 37:24 says, "They took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it." But what they don't tell you is that cisterns weren't just empty holes. They were designed to break you. Dark, cold, hopeless. That's where you've been living, isn't it? In the emotional cistern they dug for you. But here's what shakes me to my core tonight. The devil never feared your voice. He feared your memory. Because your memory holds the receipts. Your memory carries the truth they spent decades trying to bury. Your memory is the witness they couldn't buy, the evidence they couldn't destroy, the testimony they couldn't silence. Why do you think they gaslit you until you questioned your own sanity? Why do you think they made you feel crazy for remembering what actually happened? Because they knew that if you ever fully trusted your own memory, their entire house of cards would collapse. They didn't just lie about you, dear one. They rewrote history while you were still bleeding. While you were trying to survive the trauma, they were busy crafting a new narrative. They turned your abuser into the victim. They made your truth into your lie. They convinced an entire family that your pain was your fault. Think about this for a moment. When Jesus hung on that cross, they even tried to rewrite his story in real time. "If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross," they mocked in Matthew 27:40. They wanted him to doubt his own identity, his own memory of who the Father said he was. But Jesus didn't come down. He stayed right there and let his truth speak louder than their lies. That's what you're doing now. You're staying on your cross of truth while they mock you from below. But your vindication is coming. You know what breaks my heart? You learned to survive by becoming invisible. You learned that speaking up meant more pain, so you swallowed your truth like poison and called it peace. You convinced yourself that keeping quiet was the Christian thing to do. But there's a difference between forgiveness and enabling evil to continue unchecked. Ecclesiastes 3:7 says there's a time to be silent and a time to speak. You've been silent for decades. Tonight, that silence breaks. I want you to feel this in your bones, chosen one. Every time they made you doubt your memory, God was recording the truth. Psalm 56:8 says, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. Not one moment of your pain was wasted. Not one tear fell unnoticed." Heaven has been building your case while earth tried to bury your story. But here's where it gets dangerous for them. You're not that confused, broken person anymore. You've been in the wilderness long enough to remember who you really are. You've been silent long enough to recognize the sound of your own voice. And when you finally speak, it won't be to defend yourself. It will be to set the record straight for every other person they've silenced. The strategy of silence only works when the victim stays silent. But you're not their victim anymore. You're their judgment day walking. I feel the Holy Spirit moving right now. There's someone watching this who's been carrying shame that was never yours to carry. Someone who's been apologizing for things you never did while your real abusers sleep peacefully at night. If your silence ever felt like survival, if you've spent years biting your tongue just to keep the peace that was never really peace, type, "But I survived," in the comments right now. Because surviving their strategy of silence was just the beginning. What comes next will make them wish they had never touched what God called holy. Your voice isn't just returning, it's returning with the authority of someone who's been tested in the fire and refused to burn. The silence they use to control you is about to become the silence that haunts them. And every word you speak from now on will carry the weight of truth they thought they had buried forever. But there's something else rising in you tonight. Something they never saw coming. Something that goes beyond just finding your voice again. Dear chosen one, I need you to understand something that will fundamentally shift how you see your entire life story. While you were questioning your worth, while you were wondering if God had forgotten your address, heaven had a file on you, not a thin folder tucked away in some cosmic cabinet. A thick, detailed, gold-embossed intelligence report that's been updated every single day since before your first breath. Listen to what Jeremiah 1-5 reveals. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. This isn't poetic language. This is classified information. God didn't meet you at your birth. He knew your spiritual fingerprint before time began. Every struggle you'd face, every tear you'd cry, every moment you'd feel abandoned. It was all documented, all anticipated, all purposeful. Here's what they don't want you to realize. While they erased you from the group text, heaven kept your name in gold ink. While they excluded you from the meetings, angels were taking notes on your faithfulness in isolation. While they whispered about your failures, heaven was recording your resilience. You thought you were forgotten, but Psalm 139:16 declares, "All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." Every day of your life was written, not suggested, not hoped for, written in permanent ink with divine intention. Do you understand what this means? That job that fired you without cause, heaven saw it coming and had already prepared your next assignment. That friendship that ended in betrayal, God knew they would show their true colors, and He was already positioning better people to find you. That medical diagnosis that shook your faith, the great physician had already calculated the healing timeline. But here's where it gets controversial. You were never left out. You were just too early. While others were content with surface-level existence, you were being prepared for depths they couldn't even imagine. While they were satisfied with ordinary, you were being forged for extraordinary. Think about this. Why do you think your pain cut so deep? Why did rejection hit you harder than it hit others? Because ordinary people don't carry the spiritual weight you carry. Common souls don't attract the level of warfare you've endured. You weren't attacked because you were weak. You were attacked because hell's intelligence department had a file on you too, and what they saw terrified them. The enemy spent decades trying to convince you that you were cursed. But the truth is, you were so blessed that hell had to design a specialized strategy just for you. They couldn't use generic temptations. They had to study your specific calling and craft custom-made attacks. You know what's in heaven's file about you right now? It says you've passed every test they thought would break you. It says you've maintained faith when logic demanded you quit. It says you've loved people who didn't deserve it, forgiven those who never asked for it, and kept believing when evidence suggested you stop. But here's the part that will blow your mind. You were the prophecy walking around unannounced. That feeling you've always had that you were meant for something bigger. That wasn't pride, that was prophecy. That sense that your life had a different rhythm than everyone else's. That wasn't imagination, that was intelligence from heaven's file on your destiny. For 70 years, some of you have been waiting for clarity, waiting for breakthrough, waiting for vindication. But what if I told you that the waiting itself was the mission? What if your endurance through decades of misunderstanding was actually you fulfilling prophecy? The younger generation looks at technology for answers, but you've been heaven's technology. You've been the living, breathing, walking proof that faith doesn't need Wi-Fi to connect with the divine. Your prayers have been the original wireless communication. Your worship has been the first virtual reality, bringing heaven to earth through pure belief. Tonight, heaven unveils the seal, that classified file they've been keeping on you. The contents are about to be released, not to shame your enemies, but to shock them into silence. Not to embarrass those who doubted you, but to render them speechless. Here's what's in that file. You are listed as mission critical. Your assignment is marked generational impact. Your status reads, unshakable foundation. Your calling is stamped, kingdom priority. But the most shocking revelation in heaven's intelligence file about you, it says your breakthrough window opens tonight. Not next month, not next year, tonight. After decades of preparation, after years of testing, after seasons of isolation, heaven's file shows that your emergence is scheduled for this very hour. So I ask you this: are you ready to step into what heaven always knew you would become? Are you prepared to finally read your own file and discover that everything you thought was random was actually orchestrated? Are you ready to learn that your pain was preparation, your delays were divine timing, and your isolation was incubation? Because if heaven has been keeping intelligence on you this entire time, and if tonight is when that information gets declassified, then what happens next will change everything. The question isn't whether you're ready, the question is whether the world is ready for what you're about to become. Heaven's file on you ends with 5 words that will reshape your understanding of everything. Mission activation, immediate deployment authorized. Are you listening, chosen one? Because your deployment begins now. Listen to me very carefully, chosen one. What I'm about to reveal will change how you see every betrayal, every rejection, every moment of inexplicable pain you've endured. You weren't just going through hard times. You were under spiritual surveillance. The enemy didn't randomly choose you as a target. He studied you. He watched your bloodline, traced your spiritual DNA, and identified something that made his kingdom tremble. You carry something he can't replicate, can't corrupt, and can't control. So he deployed a strategy as old as warfare itself. Disable the weapon before it's fully loaded. Think about this. Why did your mother's words cut deeper than anyone else's? Why did that one betrayal from your closest friend nearly destroy your ability to trust? Why did the church, the place that should have been your sanctuary, become the very place that wounded you most? This wasn't coincidence. This was calculated spiritual warfare. The enemy used your mother's silence to make you question your worth. He weaponized your ex's betrayal to cripple your ability to love fully. He orchestrated the church's rejection to sever your connection to your calling, not to wound you, but to disable your purpose before you even knew you had one. You see, dear one, the devil doesn't waste precision strikes on ordinary people. He saves his most sophisticated attacks for those who carry the most dangerous assignments. Every trauma in your life was a targeted hack into your spiritual firewall, designed to corrupt the very code that makes you who you are. But here's what the enemy miscalculated. He thought surveillance meant control. He believed that studying you gave him power over you. But Psalm 139:16 declares, "Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be." God wasn't just watching, he was documenting. Every attack the enemy launched was being recorded as evidence for your vindication. You weren't just under attack, you were under surveillance, but so was he. And while he was busy trying to decode your destiny, God was encoding something even more powerful. Resilience that would become your weapon, wisdom that would become your warfare, and a fire that no amount of water could extinguish. Let me ask you something that's going to shake you to your core. Have you ever wondered why the same patterns kept repeating in your life? Why you kept attracting the same type of toxic people? Why every time you were about to break through, something devastating happened? That wasn't bad luck. That was systematic sabotage. The enemy planted agents in your story, people who looked like blessings but functioned as bugs in your system. They gathered intelligence on your dreams, your fears, your breaking points. They reported back on what made you withdraw, what made you doubt, what made you question if God had really called you. But here's the plot twist that's about to blow your mind. Every person who betrayed you, every door that slammed shut, every dream that seemed to die, They were all preparing you for this moment. The moment when you would stop being the target and become the retaliation. My dear chosen ones, as we come to the end of this sacred encounter, I want you to remember 3 truths that will anchor your soul in the days ahead. First, you were never the problem. You were the solution walking into a broken situation. Every rejection you faced, every door that closed, every relationship that ended, it wasn't because you were flawed, it was because you carried light into places that had grown comfortable with darkness. Second, your transformation isn't just personal, it's generational. Tonight, you didn't just receive a word. You became the word your entire bloodline has been waiting to hear. The chains that held your ancestors are breaking through your obedience. The freedom your descendants will inherit starts with your courage to change. Third, you are not a mirror anymore. You are a wildfire. You don't reflect the dysfunction around you, you transform it. You don't blend into broken systems. You burn them down and build something beautiful from the ashes. But hear me clearly. You are not walking this path alone. The same God who saw David in the shepherd's field sees you in your season of preparation. The same Spirit that raised Jesus from the grave is the Spirit that's raising you from every place the enemy tried to bury you. And there's a community of believers right here in this comment section who understand your journey because they're walking it too. I want to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly in your heart. If God has been preparing you all along for this moment of awakening, what are you going to do with the power He's placing in your hands tonight? Let me pray over you right now. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and receive this blessing. Father God, I lift up every soul who has stayed with us through this entire message. You see them right where they are, some sitting in dark rooms, some crying tears of recognition, some feeling the weight of generational pain lifting off their shoulders for the first time in years. Lord, you've been orchestrating this moment long before they clicked on this video. I pray that you would seal every word that aligned with your truth deep into their spirits. Let it take root and bear fruit that will nourish them and everyone they touch. Where the enemy has tried to convince them they're alone, show them the cloud of witnesses cheering them on. Where fear has whispered they're not strong enough, let your voice thunder that they can do all things through Christ who strengthens them. Open doors that no man can shut. Heal wounds that medicine couldn't touch. Restore relationships that seemed beyond repair. Break cycles that have run in their families for generations. Give them the courage to set boundaries with love and the wisdom to know when to stay and when to walk away. Lord, surround them with divine connections, people who will see their worth, celebrate their growth, and walk beside them as they step into their calling. Remove every person and every situation that no longer serves their highest good. Let their yes be yes and their no be no, and let both be spoken with holy confidence. Bless their finances, their health, their families, and their futures. Let favor follow them wherever they go. When they speak, let heaven back their words. When they move, let hell tremble at their steps. And when they're tempted to shrink back into old patterns, remind them who they are and whose they are. In Jesus' mighty name, we seal this prayer and every promise spoken tonight. Amen. Before you close this video, I need you to do something. In the comments below, just type, "It ends with me. It begins with me." Let that be your declaration, your covenant with heaven, and your encouragement to someone else who needs to know they're not alone in this transformation. And if this message touched something deep in your spirit, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who's been carrying the weight of their family's pain. Text it to that friend who's always wondered why they feel so different. Post it in your group chats. Let it reach the person who's been praying for exactly this word tonight. Your story of breakthrough becomes someone else's hope for breakthrough. Your courage to change gives others permission to change too. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. This isn't just content, this is community. This is where chosen ones gather to remind each other that we're not crazy, we're called. We're not too much, we're exactly enough. And we're not walking this path alone. Thank you for staying with me through this entire journey tonight. Thank you for being brave enough to hear hard truths and bold enough to believe impossible promises. Your presence here matters more than you know. Until we meet again, remember, you are marked by heaven, covered by grace, and destined for greatness. The old you dies tonight, the new you rises now, and nothing will ever be the same again. Walk worthy of your calling, chosen one. The world is waiting to see what God can do through someone who finally remembers who they are. God bless you all.